Good morning, greetings from Northumberland. It's the 7th of January 2021, and we continue to celebrate the feast of the Epiphany through the next month, leading to Candlemas. And so it would be in order to say Merry Christmas, but I'm not going to continue to say it day by day all the way through January. Our readings begin to move forward, our Gospel readings. We're in St. Matthew. And we begin with a very interesting verse, Matthew chapter 4, verse 12. When Jesus heard that John had been arrested, he withdrew to Galilee. John the Baptist arrested by Herod, not the Herod who we had yesterday with the three kings, the three wise men, not the Herod who killed the holy innocents, but a successor, equally corrupt client king of the Romans, who was criticized by John the Baptist and took his revenge bit by first having him arrested and then by having John executed. And that's a different story. But the important thing is, here we have a corrupt ruler who is using the law or is using power to get his own way. Now, you may be able to see where I'm leading this morning, because all of us will have been, if not surprised, we will have been shocked and saddened by the scenes we saw in the United States, where a mob, seemingly incited by the president of the country, tried to break into the Capitol to prevent the dealings of their parliament, their senate, and their House of Representatives, who were confirming the legal election of a new president. Here is someone who has lost power, trying to use a mob and physical force to disrupt the proper peaceful transference of power to another person. And it's terrible to see. And all leaders, and I think all nations, will rightly condemn these actions. And it'll be very interesting and salutary to see what happens in the remaining 2 weeks of this presidency, if it can last that long. But what am I saying here? Well, what I'm saying here is that here we see distortion, the twisting of the truth, corruption, all coming together, and sadly still supported by some who would claim to be Christians, claiming they're fulfilling their Christian duty in supporting President Trump. But if we stand back from it, from this side of the Atlantic, certainly, I think we can see many of the problems. But we shouldn't take the view, oh, that's happening over there, and it could never happen here. Because there are principles that are important. Principle of the division of power between the executive, the ministers of the government, the parliament, both the House of Commons and the House of Lords, the judiciary, and of course in our situation also the role of the monarch in all of this. And there has to be this separation of power and responsibility to ensure a healthy democracy. For example, you remember that a couple of years ago the courts actually ordered the Prime Minister to open Parliament again, saying that his advice to the Queen to close Parliament had been illegal and a political rather than a proper gesture. Those things are important. It's important that we have a system where no one can take so much power that they corrupt the nation. It's important that we have a system where people are able to peacefully criticize what is going on. And it's important that we have a system where those who incite violence, hatred, and unrest are dealt with by the courts as well as by the ballot box. Now, you're all thinking this is a very political statement. But it comes back to this message that we find in the gospel, that human institutions are imperfect and they need to be perfected by the Spirit and the love of God. We as a country are facing an enormous crisis. And it's important that in this crisis, those who have authority and are decision makers receive two things from us. Firstly, they should receive our prayers, and I've found it important to pray every day for our Prime Minister and our lawmakers, even when I haven't agreed with things that have happened. That's important for us. We should uphold the law and fulfill the obligations of the law. But we should also be able to criticize those things where we find mistakes or corruption or mismanagement. That's the important thing about a democracy, that those who have power are open to scrutiny and to criticism. Jesus talks again today about the light that shines. Jesus talks about the way in which people in darkness have seen a great light. The gospel applies to our national life, to our international life. And so today, as we pray for the people of the United States and for their good governance, we pray also for our own government, for the opposition parties, and for the courts, and for all the institutions that in our democracy mean that there are proper checks and balances. And we above all pray that the light of God's love will shine in our hearts and in the centre of our nation. May God bless us all.